if we can get started. Maybe a little lower, but can we start with the roll call?
David Jones,
Present.
Member Jabala,
Present.
Member Owens, Vice Chair Davis, Chair Lugers,
Here.
and then Council Liaison Holland.
Here.
Okay, we can start off with the public comments on regarding items that are not on the agenda. Would that be correct? Okay, are there any public comments just in general, not concerning the two items on the agenda? There are not. Okay,
Anybody online?
Not seeing anything.
No off-agenda comments in chat.
okay. So do we have when do we do the minutes?
Well, usually it's first, but I don't think minutes were attached, so.
Okay. All right, we'll skip that for now. Okay,
Move to continue the minutes.
yeah, yeah,
It's true.
okay.
Well,
So now we're down to the regular agenda items, and the first item is Maple Avenue speed bumps and parking control on Maple Avenue and Ashfield Road, including red curb on Maple near Station Lane.
Okay.
Start off with public comments.
No, I'm going to start off by giving you a brief report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. We had a request from residents along Maple for the installation of speed humps located between El Camino and Station Lane. Pursuant to the town's neighborhood traffic management plan, a petition was submitted to the town. It was reviewed by staff, and it was followed up with outreach to the community members to get their feedback. Is that a point of order? Okay.
He has a collar, don't know if he's got a name.
I don't see any. We have any dogs? Okay.
Okay, so following receipt of the petition, staff reviewed it. We sent out outreach letters to all the residents on Maple to get their input and feedback on the proposed speed hump installations. We received positive feedback from the greater majority of residents, approximately 74% in favor of putting in the speed humps. And so staff is recommending the installation as denoted in your package. In addition, there have been requests and concerns from residents both on Maple and on Ashfield Road with regards to parking issues along those streets, particularly during high traffic events at the town center and library. And so this is an opportunity for the residents to provide input and feedback on the alternatives with regards to addressing parking, and for you to review that and consider any sort of recommendation. And so with that, that's a brief overview of the report. If you have any, if the committee has any questions, I'm happy to answer prior to you're opening it up for public comment.
All right,
So
Do
I
any-
apologize. There was one other item. And so with regard, there was also a concern with regards to visibility and access as folks are exiting the parking lot at the back end of the library near Maple with regards to visibility and access. And so we're also recommending the red curbing of about 25 feet of Maple right at the exit to facilitate visibility and access for the vehicles exiting the driveway.
Does that fall under the new daylighting law also?
Daylighting is typically related to the approach of an intersection, and so this is actually would be on what's considered the departure side.
Okay. All right. Committee members, does anybody have questions?
I do, and that is, wouldn't we expect spillover to like Walnut if there are speed humps on Maple and Ashfield?
Repeat the question.
Sorry. Whether or not we should expect spillover to Walnut if there are speed humps on Ashfield and Maple?
Well, the preference would be that they actually use Watkins, but barring petition and or request from folks on Maple, at this point, we're not recommending the installation.
And Watkins is obviously the preferred road to use, except when there are a whole bunch of people trying to turn left onto El Camino. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Just to better understand or for clarity, this is to mitigate traffic on Maple and perhaps Walnut during events?
No, so with regards to traffic, the complaint has been related to the speeding of traffic on the street. And the petition was for speed humps to help calm traffic down.
Do we have an understanding of where that traffic is going? Because as I understand it, Maple, for example, goes from El Camino to Dinkelspiel Station Lane.
That's it. It's just the one block.
Okay, so do we know the impetus of the traffic? I mean, I'm assuming they're coming, maybe the public comment will address this, but coming off of El Camino to Dinkelspiel, or is it the other way, or
I think the complaint is related to both.
just traffic on the street?
Yeah, there are several residents here that,
And is the request for speed humps on Ashfield also?
we did not get a formal request and
Okay.
petition for that.
So just on Maple?
That's correct.
And do we have any speed data on what's happening on Maple presently?
Yes, the sergeant be able to answer that.
Our traffic.
hard to
Do you want to use a microphone?
Hi, our traffic team put the radar recorder out on Maple for a 1-week period to record speeds in and about the area. We determined that the average speed for westbound on Maple was 17 miles per hour and the average speed for eastbound on Maple was 18 miles per hour.
Speed limit is 25?
Yes, sir.
So Robert, if I could, I've been approached by a number of people on Maple. The big issue that they raised to me was, and I know there's a section in here on the parking on the corner, is that when there's an event and they've expanded the event to include the reading at the library, which is Tuesday and Thursday, but specifically events like the tree lighting ceremony, Halloween, things like that, that we either provide or ask the library to provide a shuttle and encourage people to go from the park like we did when we had our 100-year celebration and come over here, because they said they can't get out of their driveways even. So I think that's part of the problem that I know that Mrs. Quinlan and others have brought up to me and some of her neighbors. So it's not just the parking at the end, it's just the amount of parking, even though we've put no parking signs or restricted parking signs there. They're just complaining with the amount of traffic that's actually parked on the road. They can't they can't park there or they can't have friends come over and things like that. So that's part of their request. Sorry for interrupting.
Just so I'm clear, during those events.
During those events.
Gotcha.
Any other committee members have comments or questions?
Do we have a sense from someone about how many events the library will hold during the course of a year?
Well, they have two.
Well, they have weekly activities such as the story time and yoga and a few other things. And then the town probably has, I don't know, maybe about 6 or 7 events during the year. So I mean, the opportunity to talk about parking and hear what the residents' concerns are specifically are listed in or provided in the report. There were some options discussed with some residents, such as enforcement of the 2-hour parking restriction on Ashfield. There are some 2-hour parking signs on Maple as well. Or consideration of other enforcement actions or other means of parking control. But as Councilmember Whitmer said, it's really during those peak events that it's our understanding that that's when the issue is.
Okay. Yep.
But we're, the story time and things like that, which occur weekly, are creating more parked cars on those streets.
Well, they overpark the site,
Yeah,
so.
They
Yeah.
get in between 75 and on a good day, 100 nannies or children. So it'd be 50 nannies. They take up all the parking places here.
yeah.
And then that spills over to the library, to where, staff members coming in, or if I come in, any of us come in, there's generally no parking. You got to find another place.
Okay. Thank you. Now we're up for public comments. If you can please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
There's a button on the back side of the mic itself.
Hello, my name's Karen Goodman. Happy holidays to everyone. I just wanted to say, I live at 81 Maple, which is the first house on Maple on the right side of the street. And there is not a day that goes by that I don't have people parking like right in front of my walkway going into my gate. And I take care of my grandchildren, so it's really hard to get strollers up, the curve without running into rose bushes and what have you. So it's a problem every single day. And I'm thinking that I think it's probably a safe idea to put the red curb at the beginning of the block, but it's just going to push more cars and, visitor cars down our street and make the parking problem even worse. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you. Is it still on? Hi, Christine David, Ashfield Road, Friends of Atherton board member, and thrilled about all the activity that's happening in our community, and it's increasing all the time between the library, the Friends, the Garden Guild, the Arts Guild, I think it's the Guild, and the town of Atherton. Things are really starting to spin up in our community center, and it's a good thing. And I used to call it a good problem, and now the parking is not a good problem anymore. It's an issue. It's an issue that's been on Maple, and I walk here every day to the park and back. 9 o'clock, you'll see me. And, it's packed with wonderful life and wonderful people being here. And then, I can't even drive down my street. I tried to drive down here for one meeting today. There was no parking. I had to drive back to my driveway because that's as far as I could get on Ashfield to just get back down here for a meeting. So Ashfield's watching carefully as to how you guys suggest they handle their parking issues. We understand their street's different than ours. It has different options than ours. I think ours is fire, exit, egress, and ingress. I'm not quite sure. Tom, is Ashfield fire? I'm not sure. Anyway, you guys can tell me, but from what I understood, we cannot close off our street. So one of the things that we're considering and hoping to learn more from you about is the opportunity to maybe re-engage with permit parking with options for people and friends to visit. That would be great. New signs, the signs that are there look like they've been underwater for 20 years. Nobody can read them and nobody pays attention. They were there when I moved in and that was 25 years ago. So I don't think they're effective. I know enforcement's an issue, but the neighbors on our street are really willing to call the police and let them know that everybody's very up in arms, but knowing that you have it well in hand. So we're looking at speed bumps. Nobody likes speed bumps, but we do have, we think, speeding down our street. I've seen it. And I think it's people eager to get to the programs that are increasing here at the community center. So that might be an option. I know it'll end up in front of my house, but might be an option to consider. Everybody's open to that. So we're looking forward to your recommendations on how you foresee the future of this community nearby. So thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Grace Ferrando. My husband and I built our home on Maple Avenue 30 years ago, moved in this week. And boy, the street has changed so much, obviously, since this beautiful library opened. And if any of you left the meeting right now and walked through the library is packed tonight. So it's not just the events of story time and the special events during the day. Right now, the kids are, I guess, all studying for finals over there. And the library, additional parking, there's cars packed up and down our street as I speak. So I'm just thinking a solution possible, either blocking off the east side of our street or from El Camino, the west side, somehow diverting traffic down Station Lane, heading towards the park, whether that's a one-way street or, I mean, I think there are different options. I don't know what the solution is. Those are a few ideas in my mind, but it's not just the story time parking. It's constant traffic up and down both ways on our street every single day now. And I don't know, officer, when those times were taken, but I walk the neighborhood, as everybody knows. I walk my dog at least once a day, and the speed is unbelievable sometimes through all different times of the day and evening. So anyway, thank you for your time and consideration on this topic. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Hi, I'm Paul Quinlan, and I'm one of the residents, but I think there's too many X chromosomes, so I had to come to be at least one of the Ys. I think that there's three issues that are here. The first is the speed bumps. The second is the red striping to move the parking, and then the third is the parking. I think they're very separable issues, so I'm going to deal with them one at a time. So for the speed bumps, we're happy with an average speed of 17 miles an hour. That's not going to hit our kids. We're worried about the outliers who are going very fast, and people who are, whether they're late for programs or they need to get to work and they cut through Maple. We don't really care, but they tend to go very quickly. That's why we would like to have speed bumps, because it's not going to affect the people going 17 miles an hour, because these speed bumps, I think, are fixed for people that are going about 15 miles an hour, and it will slow down the people, or they'll have a very jarring experience, and they probably won't do it again. So that's why we would like to have speed bumps to slow down the outliers. In terms of striping red at the end of the street, I agree with Karen. That's just going to push all the parking farther down the street. So I don't think that really helps us very much, but other people may have other ideas. As to the issue of parking, I don't have a solution. I'm sure some people will ask for permit parking or something like that, or enforcement. I think that it's a complicated issue, and at least my suggestion would be that we just have somebody to call in enforcement during events if people are parking where they're not supposed to be parking, because I don't think that it's an issue that we would want to have enforcement out there, every 4 hours trying to ticket people. I think that would probably be more impactful on the residents than not. So my view is let's put in speed bumps. Let's not do the red thing, and let's continue the conversation on how to try to deal with the parking. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Steve Grimes, 32 Maple, new resident as of September 1st. A couple of items. I guess my comments run a little counter to some of the prior commentary that I've heard so far. I guess one obvious question is if we're in 17 to 18 miles as an average speed, you know, is it really necessary to have speed bumps? I understand the points that were made before, so I'm not violently opposed to speed bumps, but one of the things that was not discussed in the survey was while there was a specific location on the bumps, there was no discussion of signage. There were earlier comments regarding signs. Signs generally don't look good around town. Even on Maple, we have a couple of 2-hour parking signs, one of which near El Camino is sitting at about a 30-degree angle and hasn't been fixed or addressed. You can't even read it to know that it's a parking sign. So I'm not a fan of more signs beyond what we already have. And that was not discussed in the survey. I guess one other question is the survey did publish specific locations based on an approval of the vote. But what happens if you get yeses or nos? Does that move the bumps? I think that probably moved the bumps. So I'd like to understand where are the bumps going to be? And also why 2? If you look at Watkins, there's 1. So on a street that's the same length between El Camino and where on the other side of the railroad track, 1 bump there, 2 on Maple. Do we really need 2? A couple other things. Red curb. I support the red curb, and I'll tell you why. I've had numerous times in which I pulled up to that stop sign and had to back up because another car needed to come through. I've seen FedEx and UPS trucks have to back up and let one another through because there's not room to make that turn. Not to mention the fact that you can't see left when you're making the turn in the first place. So I understand that it's going to push traffic or parking rather, perhaps further up the street, but I still feel like red curve for 25 feet is not unreasonable given that corner. Let's see. The last thing I would say on parking is I think before we get to resident parking or permit parking, which I'm not opposed to, I would like to see enforcement for the 2-hour limit because that does exist on Asheville, but also we have that on Maple. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Amy Torrey, and I live at 57 Maple Avenue. I'm sort of midway down the street, and I have 3 kids, and they used to play on the street all the time. And now we love the library, but since it's construction, I've told them you really can't play on the street because people go so fast. And I'm surprised actually by the data because that seems not like what I've witnessed, and my kids have almost been hit. So I'm really a fan of speed bumps. You can put it in front of my house. You can put a big sign in front of my house. I don't care because for me, the safety is the most important thing. I also feel like the red curb will not work because even though we're midway down and you'd think that it would be way too far for people to park with young kids to go to the library, it's often packed. And my kids can't, see when they're trying to, maybe even walk to the library. It's super dangerous. And I feel like the red curb would just even compact it even more. So I'm a big fan of 2 speed bumps because I think 1, they'll just speed up, slow down, and speed up again. And I am not a fan of the red curb. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vandy O'Reilly and I live at 48 Maple, right across from Amy. And when the officer said that the speed limit was about 18 miles an hour, the problem is we have so many cars and trucks parked on the street that somebody coming down even at that 18 miles an hour, which I understand is below the speed limit, you often can't see them. And it's really a safety problem for kids, for people walking, trying to get around these cars, just trying to walk down the street. And I was coming back a couple of times from Palo Alto, and I thought I'd stop by and get a coffee. So I thought I would just park here rather than going to my house. So this happened in the last month twice. And so I drove around twice because God forbid that I should walk. And then I mean, you know, and I waited and there's nobody backing out. And so then I thought, well, then I'll just go park on the street. Well, it turned out the closest place was 8 houses down, which is where my driveway is. And I thought, and that happened, then it happened again. And it's a problem. And I too am opposed to the red line because if it's already busy, 8 houses down, if you put that red curb in, it's just gonna send it all my way or our way. Thank you.
Sorry to come up one more time. I just wanted to say, or give a suggestion. There's the courtyard there. I know that there's a courtyard that's already at Holbrook Palmer Park, but it would be fantastic if maybe we could put some parking in there and move the courtyard, add it to the other one at the park. I had something else to say, but I forgot. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
We do have one online comment for this item.
Thank you. This is Alex Key, 92 Maple. So I agree with Karen. If we could get more parking in from the courtyard, that would be great. I know there's that bit of strip of land that's being used for the construction, probably for the solar panels going on top of the town center that probably will fit 8 to 9 more parking spaces. That if Caltrain lets us use that part of the land, we could fit in some more parking spaces. That would be great. But with regard to the on Maple itself, I agree with Paul that we really do have to look at the fastest speeds rather than the average speeds, because it's those who are traveling the fastest. I'd be curious to see in that week what were the speeds of the 10 fastest cars rather than the average. Because a lot of people do respect the law, but it's those who are going too fast that are going to hurt someone. And those are the ones that we're trying to protect, the pedestrians or bicyclists coming down the road now. So that's one thing about the data collection. I am supportive of the red striping. I live near that corner and I see a lot of kids dart in and out from that street. There's a big maple tree there and some vegetation around that can make it hard to see. But if you put some parked cars there and they come down the street, those kids will get hit if they're not looking. And there is a stop sign there, but lots of people don't stop there. So that's maybe if that stop sign was enforced, then that people would start respecting it, then they would be safer. But I'm just afraid because that sidewalk is heavily used by pedestrians going on Maple, on Walnut to the park, that someone might get hit if someone who's not paying attention coming down Maple. And then one other thing I wanted to say about about Maple, it's a very narrow street. So if you have people parking on both sides of the road, it gets narrow enough that you can't actually get two-way traffic anymore. You can only get traffic one way. And that's one of the big reasons I think it's kind of dangerous to have too many people parked on Maple, is that it becomes essentially a one-way road. And if you have story time and so many people park, that means kids are going to have to walk in the middle of the road, right where the traffic is going to be in either direction. So that's kind of the big concern, is that you have that confluence of people parked on both sides, kids with story time, walking up and down the road, that it creates a hazard in which there are ways to mitigate it to make sure people slow down. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Quinlan, 49 Maple. I apologize for being late. I had to take a family member to the hospital and I had to get it back for the meeting, but I was a little late. There's some themes that have come up. Obviously, I'm going to address the red curb. I am not a fan of the red curb. I think it basically pushes everything down. And I think there are kids coming out from between the cars up and down the street. And it's just, I don't, I mean, honestly, what you get a lot of too are people who are walking their dogs. I mean, so I used to feel like it was Russian roulette walking my dog down the street. And my family has been on Maple for many, many years. Like my grandparents live there. And even just before the library was changed, it's just the patterns are completely different. We take our son out onto the street. You could play catch, not worry about it. Now forget it. It's just not something you want to do. In terms of the speed bumps, I think, and I understand I've talked to Robert, who's been wonderful about trying to explain to the extent there is a science of speed bumps. The bottom line is, for a street hour length, and Robert, I'm sorry if I'm mischaracterizing, but this is what I understood you to say. It's good to have 2 to get sort of the maximum deterrence and effectiveness, and they need to be spaced at a certain, and it hasn't been set. I understand that, but we got to have 2. And I also, speed is such an issue. I was out just taking my garbage cans in the other day, and there's somebody who peeled around from El Camino. I swear he was going like 50 miles an hour. I thought I was going to die. Thank goodness there was nobody in the middle of the street. It's a problem, and there, something has to be done. So the speed bumps, yeah, red curb, I'd say no. And I think that they're going to have to be it has to be something done because it's incredibly unsafe. At one point I counted there are 14 minimum elementary age children on our street, and it's not a big street. When you add that to all the people who are walking their dogs and, it's just, it's sort of the perfect storm waiting to happen. And I don't think anybody wants to see anybody get hurt. So I'm going to stop now. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, do we have any more public comments? Okay, so
Chair, procedurally, I think the committee should deliberate. And we're happy to summarize so that you can have a recommendation based on your deliberation.
okay, so what I think we should do is break it down into 3 things: the red curb, the parking, and speed bumps. And so, what do we have to say about this?
Well, parking just sounds like a really difficult problem. And I don't think there's any space here in the Civic Center to increase parking. It looks like it's all maxed out. That's something that's going to take some study. But speed bumps should be a pretty simple solution for one problem. The red curb sounds like would be useful perhaps in a smaller dose, just to give people sight lines on the turning without pushing more than a couple of cars down the road for parking. I'm fully in favor of looking further at the parking issue, but I don't think we can pull a rabbit out of the hat tonight. Speed bumps, yeah, we can do that.
I would say that the parking, if we start restricting parking on the street, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the next street. So now they're going to go to, well, if we do it on Ashfield and Maple, then they're going to go to Walnut. They're going to be walking further on the street. And if we restrict that, then they're going to go to wherever they can. They're going to go to Fair Oaks. So I agree the parking's a big issue. I kind of like the suggestion of moving the corporation yard. So maybe we can
Turn it into a parking lot.
Turn it into a parking lot. But okay. Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll just float the idea at some other point. I like the idea of the red curb because, you know, if people aren't aware of it, there's a new law in California. It's going to start to be enforced January 1st. It's called the daylighting law. You cannot park within 15 to 20 feet of an intersection, essentially, so that people in cars can see pedestrians and bicycles. And if we're currently having problems with people having to back up, this is when accidents occur. It's when people are in reverse. So more likelihood to hit a pedestrian or a bicyclist or another car. So we don't want to have that. So I'm strongly in favor of the red curb. And speed bumps, that's fine with me. The parking, I think there are two problems. One, if we want to enforce 2-hour parking, that's one thing, but getting enforcement's going to be difficult. That's very time consuming. You know, we only have, how many officers do we have on duty at any one time?
Excuse me. Our minimum staffing is 2, however, typically 3 or 4.
3 or 4. So,
Well, and during day shift, maybe 5 to 6 with traffic units.
okay. So I think enforcement's always going to be an issue. So I agree with David that we're going to have to look at the parking further.
One other possibility that comes to my mind in terms of traffic is the possibility, you've already mentioned that it essentially becomes a one-way street when there's parking on both sides. You could codify that and cut off traffic coming from El Camino at 50 miles an hour if it were one way the other way. I know that would be an inconvenience, but perhaps it's a partial solution.
So I'm going to jump in and say, I mean, speed bumps are sure, again, easier to implement. Parking is another issue, but something going through my head was about the red curbs versus the speed, because I remember hearing one individual say that somebody flew from El Camino onto Maple 50 miles an hour, and then another person say that they tried turning and then had to slow down and back up. So would the red curbs not, if there are no cars there, would that not increase the likelihood that somebody's willing to speed around that curb?
there's stop signs there.
Just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
The red curb area that we're talking about is up on the screen at Station Lane and Maple. So not at El Camino.
Right.
And so it is a 3-way stop location. So there is a stop sign over here where folks are exiting the town hall library parking lot. There's a stop sign here on Maple. And then there's a third stop back, if I can get my mouse to work. Oops. Went backwards, over here at, on Station Lane. So the idea is, the issue that has been relayed and discussed is predominantly related to visibility coming out of the town center parking lot and not being able to see oncoming traffic. I mean, there's with a car parked here, where the walkway is, the people at the stop sign can't see any pedestrians. People coming out of the driveway can't really see around that corner. And then if you have a parked car there and somebody at the stop sign, you can't get onto the street safely. And so the recommendation was really related to putting in no parking at this curb line to kind of help mitigate that. And so it can be probably shrunk a little bit, at least to go the extent of where that walkway is. But it's up to the committee to decide whether or not they are in support of red curbing that area.
Doesn't that fall under the new daylighting law anyway?
Well, I think, again, I think daylighting is no parking within 20 feet on the approach side.
I didn't know there was a distinction.
Yeah, it's on the, I believe it's on the approach side, David. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, and so that would be, for example, no parking as you're approaching the stop sign, but once you depart, it's parkable.
We have a sense of how much parking, if any, is pushed onto the Lloyden Drive side across Fair Oaks?
I don't believe there's that much.
And thank you to all the residents who spoke up on this and educated us, but I don't know how to procedurally ask them if they're aware of any parking on the Lloyden side.
There's not even parking on Ashfield anymore. Frankly. I mean, it's all, I know. I love it too.
Yeah, they do get most of it.
Maple gets most of it.
Ashfield gets halfway up the street almost every day. But when there's bigger events, Maple gets hit first all the time. They just do it. That's the area. But then it'll pass up to about my house as far as I've seen it.
Gotcha. Okay. So just to weigh in on this, it's funny, I had a speed thing done on my street and I'm like, oh yeah, they're fast. And I was surprised as well at the data, and there are outliers, but the data is true. It's historically slow, but it's, as the gentleman on the online said, it's the ones that are fast that aren't, going to make the thing. So from that perspective, if you all that live on Maple want a speed bump, I think that could help. And I think that's probably a pretty good place to start to see how that changes behavior as those things are designed to do. Hopefully that has an effect on the folks that are using Maple coming off of El Camino at that high rate of speed. And I get it. It's dangerous. Actually, my first house was on Maple, so I'm with you. So the yes on the speed bump thing relative to the red curb, I think that makes a lot of sense also to put the red in there to be able to have the sight lines to make that right and to improve traffic flow commercially and otherwise down at that end. Just the way that's not a 90-degree intersection. So if you're coming out into the main exit out of the library to take the first right, if you want to go north, you're going to turn right on Maple. So let's improve sight lines. I'm surprised that there isn't already a red curb where the walkway is to make that more accessible. So big yes on that. And then the parking situation, I gotta agree with my colleagues. That's going to take a little deeper dive. I'm interested in how the parking permitting would work on the one hand, maybe something like the tennis keys or something for residents. I'm not sure the demographic of who's using the library, if they're all out there in residence, in which case that might be a moot point anyway. But I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to sort of better understand, how that parking thing. And then a big piece of that, Jerry, you brought up is the enforcement side. I mean, that's going to fall on the PD to go out there and write parking tickets, which that's going to be a big change I would suspect a change for, the PD folks. So I think we'd have to talk to you guys and dig into that a little deeper.
A question for the officer. Do you need to be a sworn officer to write a parking ticket?
No,
I understand. But if we hand out.
No, we have our code enforcement that issues citations as well. So no, it doesn't need to be an officer, but it's not a heavy lift or burden for patrol or traffic to go out and issue citations if there's something that's implemented in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so anybody want to make a motion?
Oh, do you want me to summarize and then you can
okay.
agree and
Thank
turn
you.
that into a motion?
Perfect.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is support for installation of the 2 speed humps on Maple. Just for clarity, the type of speed humps that we're talking about are like the ones in our parking lot here. And so they're lighter duty because Maple is a lighter duty street as opposed to what we have on Watkins. And so they're moderate, so they're not the big blocky ones. And so we'd be putting that in similar to what we have in the parking lot through here. Then the second item, I believe, hearing support for putting in the red curb, and we can try and minimize that down from the 25 feet to something that's going as far, maybe just a little bit past where that walkway is. And then the third item is to allow for further consideration of addressing parking in the neighborhood. Residents always have the opportunity to call PD if somebody is parking, blocking driveways, et cetera, because it's illegal to block a driveway, so they can always call and have that ticketed. With regards to enforcement of the 2-hour parking zone, I'm not really hearing any support at this time, but a continued evaluation of what future parking options might be.
May I ask a question to clarify point relative to parking? 2 items. One, new to the area, so I
Sure.
don't know.
If
how it is
you're
all the
allowing
time.
for public comment, then
Yeah.
you can have him go up to the mic.
2 items. One is being fairly new, I'm not sure that I see how it is all the time during busy times. But there have been a number of times in which it's busy with the parking on Maple. And whether or not there are events, not sure, but still it's congested and parking is heavy. And I've gone through the parking lot back here and wrapped around to the back side and often see it being empty. So I guess one question is, when there are busy times, are people really fully utilizing the parking lot? Because I see it empty back here in the back corner quite often. And yet Maple is quite full with parking where people are trying to shorten their walk, obviously. So if that's the case, if I'm wrong, that's fine. But if that is the case, is there some guidance that gets people using that extra parking or the available parking as opposed to the easy route, which is just park on the street? The other thing that Woody and I were just talking about is the spots here are pretty generous. So if you need more parking, is there a way to restripe it and secure more parking lot space? So thanks.
I also wanted to add, I think it might be a good idea for all of the organizations here that are responsible for creating such joy in the community center to think about ways to consider regulating the number of attendees to the events that are here on this property. And then think about also not regulating, but trying to minimize the excitement at these things. So not 110 people come, but maybe fewer through Eventbrite and other software programs like that. So that's something that the Friends are talking about with the library. The use of space, I think, is new for all of us. But if we could collectively think about a way to help regulate excitement, that would be great. Thanks.
Are you finished? Okay. All right.
Real quick point of order.
Okay.
I didn't see that this was denoted as a action item.
There's a recommendation. There are recommendations in the staff report, correct?
Oh, okay, got it.
There are recommendations for in the staff report for action.
So we can act on this.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Wanna check.
So do we want to consider each of these items individually or as one?
One individual.
Okay. So I move that we recommend the red curb, painting at the curb red. A second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Do we need to do a roll call on that or just, no? Okay. It's unanimous. Okay, the next item is the speed bumps. And that is,
Oh, sorry, real quick. The red line that we just voted on is the reduced, not necessarily 25 feet, but reduced to the extent of the sidewalk. Okay, just wanted to clarify that for the record.
okay. The next item is installation of 2 speed bumps.
I'm for it.
I
I'll-
second.
You wanna
I'll
move?
second. I'll second.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the third item is the parking. And I move that we continue more study on parking solutions. Second, and any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that, I think, closes that item.
Thank you.
And move on to item number 2, Selby Lane, bike lane, speed humps and stop signs requests.
Great. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Similar to the last item, there are 3 discussion items on this agenda item as well. And so the first is related to the Selby Lane Bicycle Lanes project, which was under discussion at your last meeting, and there was a request by the committee to continue that conversation. And so the
No parking.
So-
I used to, but I can't anymore. So anyway, thank you for your time.
So, yeah, so an opportunity for the committee to continue the conversation, solicit additional public input and provide feedback on and recommendation on the bicycle lanes project. The secondary item is receiving input regarding speeding and other issues on Selby Lane. We have a speed hump actually being installed right now this week in one location that was approved by the council some time ago as part of the Neighborhood Traffic Management Action Plan. There were verbal requests for an additional speed hump down, I believe it's putting one somewhere between Austin and El Camino. And so staff is okay with that. If that's the direction that we go, we'd have to pick the actual location in coordination with residents. And then the third item is in relation to that speeding, some of the residents were requesting consideration of a stop sign. Installation of a stop sign typically requires a warrant analysis if we were going to do that. And so it's an opportunity for the committee to have that conversation and let us know what their thoughts are on potentially putting in a stop sign. So again, 3 items, continued discussion on Selby Lane, the Selby Lanes project, including the project design elements and providing feedback and making a recommendation to council on the bike lane project, and then receiving input from residents regarding speeding and other concerns, and if you'd like to approve the installation of an additional set of speed humps on Selby, you can do that as well. So I don't, we have our consultant Douglas Kim, who is here available to make presentation, answer questions on the bike lane project. I don't know, we gave a full presentation at the last meeting. I don't know that you necessarily want another full run through on the project, but we can if you want.
No, I'd just like to break this down into the three items. Again, the stop sign, speed humps, and then the bigger item, the Selby Lane bike lanes.
Okay. So
let's start with
Should we
So-
The last two, the speed humps and the stop signs, and see if committee members want to discuss that.
Well, why don't you start with committee questions
Yeah.
on those items, and then you can solicit public input on
Okay.
those items before moving on to the bike lanes project.
Okay. So Sergeant Metzger, do we have speed data on Selby?
A speed survey was completed for the purposes of traffic enforcement a few years ago. Trying to think at the top of my head, the critical speed was determined to be, I believe it's 29.
No, similar to, sorry, Sergeant. Yeah, similar to Maple, PD put out the black box. And they indicated that I think the critical speed was around 33 to 34. And so 85th percentile speed, where 85% of the cars are driving at that speed or below.
Do you want to explain the significance of that as it relates to speed limits and the law?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So to set speed limits, the town's for radar enforcement, we're required to do a formal engineering and traffic survey of which we collect speed data. And state law requires that the speed limit be set based on that 85th percentile number or critical speed. And generally, without special findings, the speed limit is rounded to the nearest 5 miles an hour. And then we can reduce it by an additional 5 miles an hour, given the nature of the street. So right now, the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. And the last formal speed survey that was done, as the sergeant said, found that 85th percentile was around 29. So in rounding to the nearest 5 gets it to 30, and we're able to drop it to 25. The survey that was done with the radar recorder by the PD is not an official engineering and traffic survey, but it does give a good picture of what speeds are. And so what we are finding is kind of similar to what the residents are saying, is that the speeds have kind of ticked up on the street. And so this is an opportunity to theoretically try and calm some of that traffic down. And so there are various traffic calming measures. One is speed humps, another is the installation of bike lanes, which is a later item for discussion today. And then there's other things that are also available as measures. And so just a reminder, we already have radar feedback signs on Selby that were installed, and the council did approve that one set of speed humps.
So Robert, you said they're already working on preparing to install a speed hump on Selby.
Yeah, so
that's given. That's not something.
there's one that was already approved by the city council
Okay.
some time ago. And so that
Okay.
installation is happening now.
Okay.
And so that's, I believe, between Serrano and, yeah.
Okay. Do committee members have any questions on? I guess we'll start with the speed humps. And
Is there any action that we need to take on this if something's already being installed?
Well, the request by residents, as you may hear, is for an additional set.
But
without having the first set in place already.
Well, like I say, Selby is a fairly, I'm going to say it's about a mile long. And so it's broken up by a stop sign at Austin. And so what we're looking at is the installation is, I'll call it on the west side of that stop sign. And there's a request for an additional set between El Camino and Austin. So on the east side of that.
Okay.
So the current one's going in between Serrano and Selby
then-
or West Selby? That's
Yeah.
kind of right in front of the school then?
It's a bit further east from the school. It's around 160. East is
Okay.
towards El Camino, so it's on the El Camino side.
Okay, so slowing people down as they approach the front of the school.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe I'm getting ahead, but the stop sign recommendation or the anticipation,
Request.
where would that go?
They're looking at it at, the request is for Serrano, which again is kind of near the approach of the school. And so they kind of, again, I don't know whether or not it would meet warrants. And so there'd have to be further evaluation of that. And there are other potential calming measures that we can look at that intersection in lieu of a stop sign, but it would require some additional evaluation, which we didn't have time to do before today's meeting.
Okay, so will that be a separate discussion at a different meeting then about
Well,
options for that intersection?
so the recommendation is to hear from the residents as to what their concerns are. And so what we're not asking for approval of a stop sign at the intersection at tonight's meeting, again, because if feedback is to look into a stop sign, we'd have to actually do a formal
Yeah,
analysis.
gotcha. It's all just sort of related, so I'm just trying
Yeah.
to get all the pieces together. Okay. And so the speed humps then are somewhere west of Serrano. Are they west of Austin as well? Proposed?
Well, there's just,
Give me a second and I'll pull up the location.
is it just one speed hump that has been approved? Is that correct?
It's one set that was approved.
One,
yes.
one set, okay.
How far apart are a set of speed bumps?
So when we say set, it's basically a three-piece system.
Oh,
And so these are otherwise termed, I guess, speed cushions maybe, are a better way to describe them.
layman's terms, it's one speed bump with three parts.
Yes, and so what you have is you have a center unit with cutouts for the fire apparatus, or a gap between the center unit and the side units to allow for the fire apparatus to basically go down the middle without having to encounter too much jostling.
I understand the theory.
We just want to jar those guys.
You do?
Okay, any more questions from committee members?
So, yeah, I got a question. So when we move it to public comment, we are moving the speed humps to public comment or all three?
Let's,
We haven't discussed.
let's
all three.
just start with
The
the
speeding issue.
speed humps.
Okay.
And
Cool.
Okay, give me a second and I will show you approximately where in relation to the intersection here. I just need to get back to sharing. Okay. So what we're looking at is I believe it's somewhere around here. So right near 160.
That's where it currently is?
That's the one that's being installed this week.
You said, okay, one set. Got it.
So that work started yesterday, continued today. They should be done with it tomorrow.
And can you show me where the first stop sign is? Where the one stop sign is?
All right. So the stop sign is over here. Sorry, it takes a minute for my screen to catch up with that. So the stop sign here is at Austin.
Okay.
And then gonna try and zoom out again to give you an overall picture of the entire stretch. And so up at the top of your screen is El Camino Real. Down near the bottom of your screen is Adelante Selby School. And kind of almost in the middle is Austin.
I think it's further
My
south.
mouse is not cooperating. Yeah, the arrow's getting there. There you go. Austin's right there. And so kind of you can see Austin is a good midpoint break point for that stop sign. And then the speed humps are closer to the school and closer to Serrano.
Could you point out the Serrano also, so we don't have to do it later?
Right near the red dot,
Okay, thank you.
right in between the red dot and the school. Yeah, and so Serrano is about a quarter mile from Austin.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the committee members? And we can open it to public comment then. Need the microphone.
If you can, Woody, if you're going to stand there, you can grab the microphone.
Okay. Woody Shackleton. People can't hear me. Woody Shackleton. I'm at 80 Logan Lane. Okay, 80 Logan Lane. So I think I'm here. I'm not a big fan of speed bumps, but we do have a speeding problem on Selby. So I would vote to say, let's see how this goes. And if it materially affects the speed, I think it's in a good location right by the school. That's the smartest place to put it. I was shocked that at 11 o'clock this morning, they had one half in. And by the time I came home tonight, the other half wasn't put in. So I don't know what all they were doing. There's a small army of people working on it. Anyway, if we went to another one, I'd recommend putting it on the other side of, what's that, Oak Knoll, something? Oakwood, yeah. I'd be on the east side of Oakwood, so the people coming off of El Camino would get it, because there's a lot of people that we go and we just turn on Oakwood to avoid trying to get onto El Camino. So anyway, that's all.
What are you saying? They're coming, folks, from El Camino or to?
From El Camino, people come off of El Camino and they've been, going.
Yeah, and then what you're saying, you want to catch them before they turn onto Oakwood?
Well, no, I'm just saying, most of us, those of us that are going to go to El Camino turn on Oakwood because it's hard to turn on El Camino. So we go to that stop light.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, I just should not go over one more speed bump on my way to Oakwood.
Gotcha, you're coming, you're going.
It's very parochial. Yes, this is very parochial.
Public comment, you're the first to put it in front with Curry's.
No, that's actually. Yes, you're right. Yes, it would be, you're right. It would be close to Curry's house. Okay.
To him. I don't think we need a park. I don't think we need a park. I think once they're in the right place.
I think we have a couple comments on.
Yeah, we have 2 comments that were sent to Chief McCauley as well, but we'll finish with the comments in the room first.
It's on.
It's on. Okay. I'm just going to address the outlier comment that was made sort of in the previous section. Thanks for coming out and talking to us about the speed bump and speeding situation on Selby. It has been getting worse over time, as part of also getting more traffic over time. I think you've got plenty of comments on that. So I'd like to suggest something to do about the worst outliers that we have seen. We've been living on Selby since I think 2008, 2009. And that is the county police, not you guys. My wife and I were riding our bicycle on Selby. And since we've been talking about intersections, you know where Austin is and you know where Serrano is. There were 2 cop cars that came up the street full throttle from Austin, full throttle all the way to Serrano. They were doing around 60 to 65 miles an hour when they passed us. And it is not the first time that we've seen this happen. I was advised that I should pass this complaint on myself to the county police. But frankly, this is something I would like our city council to do. I would like them to recognize that we see a speeding problem with the county police on Selby. I have no idea why they go so fast on that street. It's almost like they use it to bypass other traffic. I know it is, but you know what? That is not an excuse. One of the responses we saw was a person who had fallen on the sidewalk. And I'm sorry, that does not merit a 4-car response at 70 miles an hour. So yes, I'd really appreciate it if our council could actually send a note to these folks and say, we've heard this is a problem, stop doing this, because that immediately takes care of what I consider some of the most egregious speeding we see on that street. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Are they are there sirens on, or are they just Is
So
this them
most-
responding
Most
to
of
a-
the time when they do that, they have their siren on. That's right. But like I said, this case was 4 police responding to 1 person who had fallen on a sidewalk. Not a 1099.
Any more public comments on the speed humps?
We do have 2 that were emailed to Chief McCauley that I'll read now.
Are those about the bike lane or speed humps?
Those are about the bike lanes.
Okay, so can we hold off on that then?
Okay, we'll wait till the bike lanes.
Okay.
Motion. Or should we motion ready to discuss?
The next step would be the committee discussing the item.
Don't you have a
And-
motion in order to open it up for discussion?
No, you're bringing it back from public comment, so the committee has a chance to discuss and deliberate.
I actually just got one more public comment related to the humps in chat on Zoom.
Okay, yeah.
I used to live in a house that has a speed bump right in front of my house. And when a big truck passed by and I can hear very big noise, the noise level is kind of high when the truck passed the speed bump and then carry a lot of load and then go down and then make a lot of noise. And the vibration is pretty serious too. So I almost feel like an earthquake. So I'm not sure if we study that vibrations or noise level when we decided to do speed bumps. That's my questions.
Thank you.
Right.
Any other comments? Okay, so
There's one online.
about speed humps.
We did have a question on Zoom if it would be possible to install paved humps, like the ones used in Menlo Park, rather than the current plastic humps, which the concern is that those would be slick during rainy weather.
All right, so now speed hump. So I personally think, let's see what happens with the speed hump that's installed and revisit this after the police can take another look and see if this has been effective rather than move to install additional speed humps. Anybody have comments?
That makes sense to me.
I agree
would
with that.
say you-
Yeah, the first set or an experiment, see what happens.
Right.
Right,
Second set, sure, if needed.
yeah.
If it
Okay.
works and if the east side isn't affected, well, probably won't be affected by that, but if it works on the west side, I'd say you guys can visit later.
I think they're there to solve slightly different problems, though. So I'm interested to see if the speed bump that's going in now will help solve the problem around Adelante and that area. And I think it's interesting to see kind of what changes come from that, and if we want to apply those changes to the eastern side as well.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion on this?
Oh, and as to the material, I don't think we need to, do we need to mention that?
Well,
So
It-
I think it would
I
be
can
something
answer that.
along the lines that we would wait until
Yeah.
the additional speed bumps would be
Got it.
discussed at a further meeting after the police have evaluated the effectiveness of the single speed bump.
Okay, well, so since you're not recommending the installation, there's no real action to be
Okay,
taken on this
great.
one. I will give a little bit of clarity in terms of the material. What we are installing now are temporary humps to see how they function. And we have an opportunity at a later date to remove them if they are an issue, relocate them, or otherwise make them permanent. And so we start, rather than starting with asphalt, we start with something easier to remove.
And cheaper.
Can I ask who made the comment about the slippery speed bumps?
It was John
John
Langbin.
Langbane.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. Because he's a bicyclist and that's why he's concerned about it.
I was trying to figure out who would be worried about that. Yeah.
And as far as the police department, we were going to give it a couple of weeks for residents and people that drive through the area to get used to the speed bumps and have an understanding that they're there. and know that they're there so that they can act accordingly. And then we'll go out and do another speed survey, just like the one that was performed for the information that we had earlier.
Got it.
But it should be ready and prepared for the next committee meeting.
Cool.
Thank you, Sergeant Metzger. So the next item would be the stop sign at Serrano. And is this an action item for us, or so we could just make a recommendation?
Yeah,
What
if
is
there's
it?
enough public feedback that you actually want to make any sort
Okay.
of recommendation on it,
All
you
right,
can.
I'll start off with my comments as I really abhor stop signs as a means of speed control. It seems to me like that's the purpose of the stop sign. Anybody else have comments or questions?
Yeah, I mean, speed bumps can calm traffic down. Stop signs every block would do the same thing, and you'd waste a lot more time and a lot more gas and pollute more. So, yeah, I think stop signs are definitely a second choice, but we don't even have a definite proposed location. And apparently the city would have to, the town would have to do some actual legwork to justify putting in a stop sign. Let's see how the speed humps work.
I agree with David that I think we're a long way from really digging in or deep diving into where a stop sign would go and what that would mean. I think to solve the same problem, the speed humps are half in apparently now. So let's let them see what happens relative to, this is all about the traffic in and around Adelante. So
Okay.
start with the speed bumps and see what happens and give that some time to
Okay.
soak for the residents.
Any
and
more
the-
questions? Public comments? Nobody online?
Yeah, no online public comments relating to the stop signs.
Okay. So I think the consensus is that we're not going to recommend having a study or anything at this point. Just see what the results are of the speed bump installation.
Okay.
Need anything further?
Not on this. I will say that we did get one public comment asking about another item. And it's related to an item that is being delegated by the city council. There just wasn't enough room on tonight's agenda to talk about it. And that is it was actually, again, part of one of your previous conversations, and that's looking at the reduction of speed limits in front of schools. And so that is going to be coming before you at your next meeting.
All right, so on to the final item, which is bicycle lanes on Selby. And we have the consultant here, so ask any questions that you have for committee members.
Well, I'll just start off by saying I missed the last meeting, so I didn't consume all the stuff that you guys had, but I've since caught up, and some of the comments from residents along Selby about the bicycle lane project sounds like it's a giant step backwards in terms of pedestrian safety. There was one mention of there are only,
Well, can we
sure,
just wait on that until we discuss it and just
Sure.
questions if we have, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Doug, if you have questions for Doug or Robert or.
Well, I guess
we can have a discussion.
Sure. So I guess my question would be, did you encounter the same opinions from local residents in building this proposal?
So can you clarify what opinion
The opinions that putting in bike lanes up to Adelante is going to decrease pedestrian safety?
We had not heard that. We had heard a variety of comments opposed to the bike lane installations, and there were some additional comments. I mean, there were residents that came to the last meeting. There were additional public comments that Michael will read as we get into that public comment area. There were some concerns with regards to bike lanes increasing traffic speeds, which most evidence is the contrary by putting in the bike lanes and narrowing the width of the lane. It usually calms traffic down as opposed to increasing. And I don't know that we want to go through all the public comment that we got last time, but there was a significant amount of comments opposed to the project.
Okay.
What, and I forgot, what is the length, width of the lanes with the bike lane? Is it 10 or 11 feet?
I believe we're doing 11 feet with a 5-foot wide stripe, 5-foot wide bike lane was
Okay.
what was proposed. And then adjacent to that was having to do some stormwater treatment measures. And just as a reminder, we started with bioswales, and after getting feedback from the community, we revised the recommendation to put in infiltration trenches in lieu of that, so that it can be done in a way that is more flush with the surroundings as opposed to having dips, as well as being able to better match some of the surroundings, because it'll have a gravel top and can be done in a way to match the surrounds a little better.
Okay.
But you do have members of the public here to talk about it, and then there's several online
Okay.
as well.
Any more questions from committee members? Okay, we'll move to public comments then. Anyone present that wants to comment on the bike lanes?
Woody Shackleton, 80 Logan Lane. I'm opposed to the bike lane. I don't see any reason for it. I think it's just going to encourage bikers. My understanding is this plan was built years ago when the school down there had older age kids. It now doesn't have older age kids. I think it ends at 4th or 5th grade. And I see I rarely see bikers on Selby Lane. I just don't see very many of them. And so it seems like it's going to encourage more bikers. And I don't know that I want to encourage more bikers on my street. And we don't need, and I understood if we had a really active children riding bikes back and forth to school, it would make a lot more sense. But I see no kids, none, zero, riding their bikes back and forth to school. And when people park, I don't know how it relates to the parking, but when people park, when I'm trying to come out of Logan, I can't see left or right. It's like, when there's been construction, the people across the street are building a house on Selby. So when the trucks are parked, you're just inching out, trying to see around you're almost in traffic before you can your front of your car is in before you can see if anybody's coming. And it just seems like that's hard with cars, and with bikes are even harder to pick up when you're suddenly, you're trying to figure out, and then you make a move to get out when you think it's clear and you didn't see a bike coming. So to me, it seems dangerous to encourage more biking on Selby Lane. So I oppose a bike lane. 11 feet seems huge.
Any other public comments?
Hi, Ross Conningstein, 130 Selby Lane. We had a meeting, I guess, at the Selby Adelante School on May 21st. I summarized up a bunch of notes and comments from that meeting and sent it in to Macaulay for inclusion. I haven't heard it referenced at this discussion.
I think that's going to be.
It will be available for you.
Well, I'm gonna say it's available. If you want to say them, you can. Otherwise, Michael was ready to read the public comments that came in online.
Well, then I will save me reading that, and you can do it the traditional way. But yeah, in summary, I'm against it as well. We think that it turns Selby Lane, which is a lane, into essentially Middlefield Road and a thoroughfare and takes away parking and just it seems to have no benefits for the residents. The people who bicycle there come through Redwood City. They're going to continue doing that. We might get like an additional dozen bicyclists for a cost of how many $1 million, and destroying a nice infrastructure on the street. It just does not seem like a win in any way.
Thank you. Michael,
You know,
want
see if they want.
anyone else for public comments on bicycle lanes?
Okay, so before Michael starts reading, we have some folks online.
Okay.
So the folks online, if you're interested in speaking, if you have your hands raised, Michael will allow you to speak one at a time.
Yeah, if anyone in Zoom would like to speak, raise your hand through the Zoom app and I can unmute you. No.
Just let Lauren know. Lorna, you can speak.
Well, thank you very much. I've been listening and I agree with the speakers before. I agree with Ross, who is my neighbor. Selby Lane is a very busy street with traffic. The last thing we need is bike lanes. We need a stop sign at Serrano. I walk my dogs in the morning. We need to slow people down. Every exit onto Selby Lane is Selby Lane, and that is an accident waiting to happen if we put bike lanes in. So I vote no on the bike lanes. I vote yes on a stop sign at Serrano, and I vote yes for more speed bumps. Thank you.
I believe Connie Laurie has a public comment. Maybe not.
Connie, you can go ahead and speak.
If not, we have another public comment.
Okay, we'll get back to her.
John, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, this is John Langbine. I live in Redwood City, but occasionally I do cycle on Selby Lane, actually mostly on West Selby Lane. Anyway, I favor the bike lanes. I think what the goal of the bike lanes is to actually encourage some of the students to actually ride their bikes to school rather than having their parents dropping, getting in their car, driving down Selby Lane, adding to traffic and dropping the kid off at school and reversing. So I think that's part of the goal. I have just a minor question. Unfortunately, I missed all the public presentations, which is my fault. But anyway, the sketches that I've seen of the layout, it suggested that there was going to be 12-foot traffic lanes, and why can't they be reduced to 10 to 11 feet? I've been involved with the project on Santa Cruz Avenue in West Menlo Park, and there the county is going to be putting in 10 to 11 foot traffic lanes on a road that has far more traffic than Selby Lane. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
We also have a public comment from Steve Brickley.
Yes, we live at 191 on the corner of Selby and West Selby. And I'm out there pretty often. And I see bikes, but I don't see them turning on from West Selby to Selby Lane itself. It isn't frequented enough in my view.
So I believe that those are all of the comments from Zoom. I do have two that were emailed to Chief McCulley that I will share with council now. The first one is from Jenny Reddo on behalf of the residents of 185 Selby. She summarizes that there were several reasons against the bike lanes on Selby at the September 24th meeting. How she is opposed, she and the other residents of 185 Selby are opposed to the bike lanes. They believe that installing the bike lanes in the street is not needed by the school, not desired by the residents of Selby, and is a waste of money. At the very minimum, she would like to see the committee either wait until the bicycle lanes are installed on Woodside Road, since this is a more direct route to the bicycle lot at the school for those coming from the old Adelante campus, which is where more of the student body lives. And if someone was going to send their 4 to 10-year-old on a bicycle from there, they would take 84 to Atherwood Avenue to get to the back entrance of the school rather than Selby, or wait for the town to update the old usage plan from 2014 based on the new traffic flow in the area, basically to that this plan is outdated. And then I also have a comment here from Ross Coningstein. And the first part of this comment is a summary of feedback shared at a meeting, public feedback session at the school itself. The proposed bike lanes aims to enhance safety and accessibility, especially for safe routes to school. However, the below facts about this school that the proposal neither recognizes nor addresses. Adelante School is not a neighborhood school. It draws very few students from the immediate neighborhood. The majority of students come from all around the region. Some arrive by bus, but many are dropped off by parents on their way to drop off their other kids at different schools or go to work. Adelante School is also an elementary school. Very few parents would let their young children bike alone to and from school. A representative bicycling parent was present. They were from Redwood City and biked with their children. According to them, the number of bicycles commonly parked at Adelante School is about 12. They use the back entrance and parking area on Himmel because Himmel is a more convenient, safer, and faster bicycling route. This proposal puts bicycling lanes on the parts of Selby that are unlikely to be used by the students at Adelante. Parent parking along Selby at Adelante School during drop-off and pickup is a mess. The bicycle lane proposal makes this worse because people would have to park further and walk longer along car traffic, thus more chances for pedestrian driver accidents. And finally, Selby Lane experiences flooding. The proposed bike lanes would be the first parts to be submerged, and it further pushes pedestrians into the flooded sides. The meeting discussion made clear that the minor drainage improvements were legally required by our retention areas, not fixes for flooding. To add insult to injury, the proposal requires removing residence landscaping. He then goes on to list several flaws in this proposal from the viewpoint of the school. School student parents would have to park further away, increasing the chances for harmful interactions between children and moving cars on the road, making safety worse. It removes homeowner landscaping, as mentioned, and places cyclists and pedestrians in those areas that flood the worst without addressing the flooding concerns. The proposal does not define success. Significantly reduced car trips and improved safety might be ways to measure success. This proposal has no data, logic, or credible story for either. And finally, as a resident of Selby Lane, he would like to note these specific undesirable effects. Widening Selby Lane makes it look and feel a lot like Middlefield Road, no longer a lane. What about protecting the peace and tranquility of Atherton residents? Turning Selby Lane into a Middlefield Road would make speeding even worse. A narrow mixed-use lane with frequent driveways signals drivers to keep speeds low. Additionally, many residents on Selby Lane have front gates. Cars waiting for the gates to open would block the proposed bike paths. The proposed bicycle lanes would remove essentially all street parking along Selby Lane, overfilling the few side streets when there is a construction or when residents have their parties with many guests and cars. So in summary, the meeting invitation asked for community feedback to ensure the success of this project without defining success. The proposal states the next steps are to gather and assess information from meetings and then move forward from concept to design. This misses the key step of passing a vote to proceed. My sense was that the overwhelming feedback from residents in the May 21st meeting was that this proposal makes things a lot worse and therefore success is proceeding no further. This proposal should be scrapped because it makes no sense for this school and this street. At a rough project cost of in the millions of dollars, it might enable a dozen additional bicycle commuters. $250,000 per additional student cyclist is a huge waste of taxpayer dollars. It introduces tremendous inconvenience for both Selby Lane area residents and parents and students, but addresses no key issues and would ruin the feel of the neighborhood. I hope that the town has already received enough feedback to scrap this plan. If not, it must be put to a vote by affected residents. Go ahead, Claire.
Oh, hi, thank you. I sent a letter in and asked to have it read, but I guess it's not being read. Can I just read it now to you? Or did you want to read it yourself?
No, go ahead, Claire.
Okay, I said, I'm writing in protest of the proposed Selby Lane bike project. In my view, the issue the town should address is pedestrian safety and traffic congestion along Selby Lane, not adding unnecessary bicycle lanes and eliminating existing pedestrian walkways. I've lived on Selby Lane for 42 years. Only infrequently do I observe bicyclists along Selby Lane and almost never children bicycling to school. Recently, since Selby Lane School became Adelante Selby Spanish Immersion School, the mix of students has changed. No longer do I see students walking along Selby Lane. Many their parents now they're now being driven by their parents. Many parents walk along Selby Lane and Serrano Lane and walk their children to school, causing significant congestion during school drop-off and pickup times. I frequently walk along Selby Lane with my dog. If a car or truck is parked on Selby Lane, I'm forced to walk in the street, essentially sharing the road with cars. And I also see that with children being walked to school by their parents. Because of the current parking situation around Adelante Selby Spanish Immersion School, I often must walk on the street for a considerable distance and hope cars will go around me. I've almost been hit several times by cars backing out from parking spots because drivers are focusing on finding a gap in the traffic rather than looking for pedestrians. Sometime around 20 years ago, the town of Atherton installed, a gravel swale and a sand walkway along both sides of Selby Lane to help with drainage and improve pedestrian access. I tried with essentially no success to find more information on the project in the town's online archives. I did find limited information from a drainage study update report written in 2015. On table 3.3-3 of the townwide drainage study update of April 2015, there are references to improvement projects J1 Selby East Swale and J2 Selby East Upgrade SD system. And also figure 3-5 of the report also shows swale along both sides of Selby Lane between West Selby and El Camino. From what I remember of the project, and recent measurements I made in front of my house, the sand walkway and gravel swale together extend about 5 feet from either side of the roadway, first with the sand pathway for walkers and next to it gravel swale to reduce flooding. If a bicycle lane adds 4 or more feet to each side of the roadway, most or all of the swale would be covered, likely exacerbating flooding problems, and the pedestrian pathway would be eliminated, making it even more difficult to walk along Selby Lane, especially during raining seasons. Also, once the walkway swale project was completed, little if any maintenance was provided by the town, and over time, many residents have replaced the sand and gravel in front of their houses with their own gravel or other permeable materials. Does the town of Atherton plan to maintain the landscape it proposes to put along the bicycle lanes? I doubt if most residents are willing to maintain or water the town's landscaping. Consequently, I recommend you focus your efforts on where they are needed most: pedestrian safety and drainage. The town can use the Sharo or shared lane bicycle markings to remind Selby Lane motorists to share the road with the few bicyclists they may encounter, as you have on other streets in Atherton. Thank you.
Lorna has another public comment. All right,
I
go ahead,
just
Lorna.
wanted to reiterate, the goal is to make Selby Lane more people friendly. Bike lanes are going to make it way more dangerous. If we can put in some speed bumps, I walk my dogs every morning and I walk them at my own risk. People drive so fast. If we can slow people down on Selby Lane, maybe with a stop sign at Serrano, maybe with another 2 speed bumps, I think that is the goal of the people who live on Selby Lane. Thank you.
All right, I believe Connie does have a comment she would like to make. All right, go ahead, Connie.
Connie, we don't hear you if you're speaking.
Your mic on.
Yeah, I'm afraid we can't hear you, Connie.
Still no audio.
Okay. In the end,
Emailed with Connie several times. She reiterates what has been said.
yeah, and Connie has indicated that she does not support the project. Jenny Redo messaged in text indicating that she wanted her comments read, I guess verbatim in terms of her email. So she pasted them into the chat. So I'll read those real quick.
So her exact words: Dear Transportation, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Safety Committee, at your last meeting on September 24th, we, the 4 voting taxpayers at 185 Selby, gave 6 very important factual reasons why Atherton should not waste money on to install bicycle lanes into Selby Lane. Although I, Jenny Rideau, am on this call and can repeat them if desired, I don't want to waste your time as they were read into the minutes. I would like to, however, repeat our joint recommendation. We believe installing bike lanes on this street is not needed by the school, not desired by the residents, and is a waste of money. At the very minimum, the committee should place this idea on hold until Woodside Road bicycle lanes are installed, which are already on the way. This is a more direct route to the bicycle parking lot at the school for those coming from the old Adelante campus, where the vast majority live. If someone was going to send their 4 to 10-year-old on a bicycle from there, they would take 84 to Atherwood Avenue, where there is a crossing guard each afternoon to enter via the back entrance of the school, or wait for the town to update the now decade-old usage plan from 2014 that you first based this bicycle lane idea upon, and you will find the traffic has changed dramatically since then. Thank you for your consideration. Jenny Redo, Kevin Brown, McKenna Brown, and Alexa Estrella Brown.
Any more comments online? Doesn't appear to be any more comments.
So can you, this is probably not going to be something else.
Okay, so what we had asked is for the committee to provide recommendations in terms of the elements and features on the bikeway and a recommendation to the city council on whether, how, or in this case, whether or not to proceed with the project at this time. And if we are proceeding, we had some specific elements that we have related to the bikeway, and that includes the width of the travel lane, which we talked about being 11 feet with 5-foot striped bike lanes on each side, infiltration trenches in lieu of biotreatment systems to manage that. Just as a reminder, and I think one of the comments that was made by Jenny was that we have an effort that we are embarking on now to update our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. We put out a request for proposals for that and are in active negotiations with a consultant on that project, on that development. So what we're looking for is basically a recommendation from the committee on what you think how we should proceed on the project.
So comments from committee members?
Well, I have a question, and that is, given the proposal of 11-foot lanes for cars, 5-foot lanes on each side for bikes, what's left for pedestrians? How much space do they actually have? Not including when there's parking going on, just.
We have what, about 15 left?
In some places, yeah.
Yeah, so in some places, I mean, keep in mind that we have the full. So the full right of way on the street, if I'm not mistaken, is around 60 feet wide. Is that correct, Doug?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, by and large, it's about 60 feet in terms of right of way. So once you take out approximately 30 feet for the improved roadway, you have about 15 feet on each side. Keep in mind that that space is used by folks in different ways. That includes landscaping. They have their driveway accesses, there's mailboxes, there's other features within the right of way. And so in some areas, it's just dirt or gravel or other things. And so, or puddles of mud. And so,
Landscape or trees or power poles. I mean,
Yep.
I think I
yeah,
wouldn't
so
want it to
I
be
say
felt like
outside
there's
of the
just
improved roadway,
15 feet
there
of
would be
usable
about
space on
15.
either side of the street. Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
Can I ask or make a suggestion for some information that might be helpful? Public comment was a lot of people having concerns about how much widening is happening. So I think it would be useful to explain how wide the pavement is now, because a lot of it is narrowing the lane to add car space for bikes, and how much new pavement is being added, because I think that's something that is confusing everyone.
Yeah.
So
So by and large, the roadway is paved out at about 24 feet or so, which allows for 12-foot vehicle lanes in each direction. So the proposal is to narrow that lane to about 11 feet. We might be able to take it down to about 10.5, but widen the existing pavement by an additional 4 feet on each side of the road. And so in terms of the widening of the asphalt, we're talking about 4 feet on each side to accommodate a 5-foot bike lane, which is the minimum standard.
Robert, does that include the green infrastructure? That would be extra, wouldn't it?
The green infrastructure would be put outside of that.
Right. So it'd be additional.
It would be additional. And so what we looked at was basically about 3 or 4 foot width in terms of the gravel infiltration trench. There is another option that we had looked at, but may be cost prohibitive, and that would be to put in the bike lane as permeable pavement. And so that could limit the extent of the width of work, but it's a lot more costly to put the permeable pavement adjacent to the roadway because we'd have to put something to cut off water from undermining the existing road. And so it's a possibility. It just costs more money.
So we're looking at the road going from 24 feet to 30 feet in a 60-foot right of way, essentially.
Roughly.
Okay. Any more questions or comments?
Yeah, I got a couple comments. At our last meeting, we discussed, I think we mentioned the chicken or egg problem where a lot of people aren't cycling down Selby Lane. And the question was that because there's no bike lane? Or is it alternatively, the reason we don't have a bike lane is because people aren't cycling? I think I said that right. But I think with public comment, it sounded like if we were to put bike lanes in, people would use it. And that's one of the things they didn't want. And I wanted to reiterate our job as a committee, from my vision when I first joined, it was that obviously we're here to serve the community members as a whole, not specifically one street, but that in addition to promoting health and wellness through bicycling and walking. And that was part of our Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee mission statement, essentially, if you will. And so saying, no, we shouldn't have bicycle lanes simply because it would crowd up the street and mess up the aura of the street kind of contradicts that. So I'd say, that being said, I feel like it would.
I'm going to apologize, Raymond, for interrupting. We finally have Connie working now.
Oh, okay.
And she has indicated that she would like to speak. And so I apologize. Go ahead, Connie.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. This has been so difficult. The one thing I think the committee needs to understand, and we've had a number of meetings here in the neighborhood and have had many people that live here gather, and there is not one person that is in favor of having a bike lane on Selby Lane. Not one person. There is huge concern about safety of children. You know, when this package was originally put together, I think it was about 10 years ago, and that's when it was Selby Lane School, and children did ride bikes to school. That has all changed. The school now only goes up to, I think, the 4th grade. All the parents drive their children to school. We have a whole different situation here on this street. We have cars parked all over the place and children walking from the cars to get to school. Nobody is in favor of bike lanes. There was one man that just spoke 20 minutes ago who lives in Redwood City who would like to have them. There is not one local person that lives here that wants that. Our street is a lane. It's not an avenue. It will change completely the why people want to live in this area. So people are not listening to the people that live here, and I think this needs to change. Thank you so much.
Raymond, if you want to continue.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I guess just to reiterate, the building of the lanes is theorized that it would increase bicycle activity, and while that was presented as a bad thing, that in my eyes is kind of the point of why we're here. as a committee. Now, when transportation comes in as well, I still believe the health and wellness is still, and promoting bicycling is still in our mission. But of course, I've also heard that a lot of public comment saying that this is an old study. And I don't know how much stuff has changed. So personally, I would recommend redoing the study, and then eventually I probably would say, let's make a shared lane or make a bicycle lane just to promote bicycling and walking activity. But first, the redo of the study, if that seems fitting to the rest of the committee. And that's the end of that part, but I did want to also ask on a separate note. Somebody had mentioned that parking in the street caused them to walk their dog and walk themselves in the street. Putting bike lanes in, wouldn't that negate any parking on that street, therefore making it more available for walk? No, it wouldn't. So you would still have parking space?
But if you've got, right now they have 24 minus 60, 36 feet, 18 feet on each side. It seems like you would be able to walk almost anywhere without walking in the street. I sat at Selby School for 2 mornings, and most of the people walk their children on the inside of the cars. Some walked along the street, but if there's a bike lane, they could walk in the bike lane also, which would separate them from the cars. But there still would seem to be adequate space, even if there was a bike lane.
Is that walking accessible from a?
For the most part, yes.
Cool. Just wanted to check. I yield my time.
Any other comments? So I don't think we can punt like we did last time. We have to come up with a recommendation.
So I was thinking about redoing the study. I wanted to hear from the other committee members what you guys' view on that is, and if that would be beneficial or not.
I think that's punting again.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
So that's my comment.
Okay.
I don't know what anybody else's is.
Raymond, you're suggesting redo the bicycle study about just basic bicycle transportation and movement through the town?
I think specifically about on Selby Lane. I don't know if there was a study specifically on
So-
Selby or if that was just a general town.
Yeah, my thoughts.
To redo the bike, update the bike pedestrian plan.
My thoughts are, so right now, there's a bike lane on Valparaiso. There's going to be a bike lane on Woodside. I avoid Woodside like the plague. That's a 4-lane highway. You don't want to be on it. So there has to be some way to get from El Camino, and it's going to get bike lanes here within my lifetime. But it's scheduled for, I think Redwood City's supposed to have it all the way to Selby Lane by 2028. So we have to have a way to get from El Camino to Alameda de las Pulgas. And I would say there has to be something in between Woodside and Valparaiso. If we say Stockbridge, I think we're going to get the same result. Nobody wants it. If we say Atherton Avenue, I think we're going to get the same result. We don't know whether Selby Lane is always going to be a school like this. Maybe it's going to be older, maybe it's going to be younger. And, as I said, my observation is I saw one parent towing a 3rd-wheel bicycle on Selby Lane with a child. All the rest did come in the back way because that's where they live. It's the shortest direction. But if you build it, will things change? So that's my comment on the subject. Anyone else?
Well, as a science guy, sounds like the data is probably what, 12, 13 years old? If the plan was published in 2014, that data is going back a long time.
Pre-pandemic.
Um, I, I guess I would need to be persuaded that it's still valid.
Doug, do you want to make some comments or?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the comments we heard from residents were very much what you're hearing tonight. The one thing I wanted to share was when residents asked, well, why are we doing this? It's because, of course, this project has been on the books for 10 years. So when the council adopted this citywide bike and pedestrian master plan, this was a priority. And I just wanted to make the point that certainly the committee and the council can punt on this and update the citywide master plan. But you have to remember why Selby Lane was on the books 10 years ago. And it was in part because when you do a bike master plan, you want things to connect. And there was a gap, and still is a gap, in the system. And that's on Selby Lane. So you have the bike lanes on Austin, then you have it resuming sort of on Oakwood. But then you have a quarter-mile gap that it's generally a best practice to close those gaps if you want a complete bike system. So if you want to update the master plan, that's fine. But they're not going to, there's no other real options to closing that gap other than Selby Lane. And so I just wanted to have the committee understand, I think, what the logic was 10 years ago in trying to come up with a complete connected system.
Well, Doug, I led that activity, Doug, and the reason that that street was there in addition to connectivity, but one of the main reasons was it's a route to school. Routes to school got first priority. And that was a route to school, even though we don't have very many students at that school. But right across El Camino, there's a group of students that came across El Camino and then went to that school.
Absolutely.
So that's the second reason or first reason.
Absolutely.
If I can make a comment, I've been attending the meetings on traffic management on Ringwood, going into Menlo, Atherton, and Laurel School and Coleman Avenue. And that plan is talking about redoing the master plan. That has been in process for 20 years. So we don't want to mimic Menlo Park and keep this going for 20 years. Sorry, Menlo Park.
So just as far as I stand, so to speak, I was wondering about the whole redoing of the initial plan, but then I understand the issue with, I'm going to say bureaucracy, but yeah, I feel like things do take a long time. Whether that affects the importance or relevance of the data that was returned is a whole nother story. But if that is not the course of action that we're going to be going down, then because what I signed on to is preparing for or improving safety and health and walkways through walking and bicycling, I feel like it's my job to say that's what adding bike lanes will do, is improve that. It won't improve the moods of the people who are living there likely, but it will improve the health and activity of the people within the town and outside of the town, as we heard from Redwood City. Because also, like Doug had said, it would connect those bicycle lanes so that you have a place to transport and the bicycle lane. So Selby Lane also sounds to be kind of fitting. I'm not going to get into the details of what a lane is, but I've seen boulevards that are just a white median line, not an actual boulevard in the middle. So it's just a name. Yeah, that's what I said.
Considered it like wall and validated the symbols that are put on it. Why can't that be done itself?
What was the question?
Is the committee opening, is the committee opening for further public comment?
I think public comment at this point is closed.
Okay, committee members, any other comments?
Well, a question for Doug, perhaps. Is there any possibility of negative impact on pedestrians? We've got people saying there will be. Are people going to be able to navigate on foot easily and well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Tom made the comment earlier. If you look at the right of way, it's not open space, right? You've got utility poles, you've got people's front yards. We did look at trying to do a pedestrian path. The problem is that's even more invasive for residents because you can't put, let's say, a sidewalk right up against Selby Lane and the stripe. You've got to have a setback. And so that pushed the repaving of people's front yards in many cases further towards their front line. And so there had to be a choice. And in an effort to try to advance the idea of options on Selby Lane, the bike lane was seen as a less intrusive option because, again, as Robert said, we could slice off a foot off of the painting of Selby Lane and limit the amount of paving to 4 additional feet.
So let me interject and just add something. So when we did do our initial public outreach meeting, there were a lot of comments about pedestrians. Can we do a walkway instead? And so when we looked at that, one of the issues is not just what Doug was saying in terms of where it's located, it's also what it's made of, but you can't park. What it does is actually it impacts parking more because once you put that sidewalk in, are you expecting cars to drive over that pedestrian pathway for parking? And so that kind of, like I said, as Doug was saying, it extends the width of that impact. With regards to what it does to pedestrians now, right now you have 2 things happening. Either A, people are walking on the shoulder, or they're walking in the middle of the street, which is what people are doing all over town. There is no dedicated pedestrian pathway on Selby, similar to other streets. As was alluded to, is that if you put a bike lane in, you're forcing where the vehicles are going to be. And so you're pushing them away from the edge of the road. And right now they're right up against the edge of the road. And so theoretically that bike lane can also be used by pedestrians. And then the last comment I do want to say is that we, as I stated before, we are actively engaged in trying to get a consultant to update our bicycle master plan.
But the sloped curbs don't have a hard curb cutoff. If we installed those, I've seen those mostly going through like San Mateo or something, where cars pull up on the sidewalk. That could, and it also does butt up against the property line, at least in those areas that I've seen them. Would that be something that is doable, not necessarily feasible, but doable?
So you're saying build like build a sidewalk that people park on?
They can park up. I don't
So
know if
I'm
there's a
gonna say
chunk of that.
then you're not providing a real walkway.
Well, about half of it is, they usually only park up halfway, but that would,
So I mean, it really depends. So your car that,
You know the reason that those folks park on the sidewalk?
let's see.
because there's not enough room on the street.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Yeah, so they're using the pedestrian pathway
Right.
to solve a parking problem.
But they don't get ticketed. I don't know what the laws are regarding that. If that's just like,
You know, Ringwood, as you mentioned, is a particular case where it belongs to county, so we can't, the Atherton Police can't enforce parking issues on Ringwood. That's up for the sheriff's department, and sometimes they defer that to the CHP. There is no parking posted all along Ringwood. However, there is a sidewalk there, and I don't think a lot of people realize that there is a dedicated sidewalk for a portion of Ringwood. Cars park on the sidewalk in order to create a parking issue as opposed to leaving the sidewalk open for the students. Hence forcing the students to walk out on the roadway and in the bike lane. So when you have school releasing students at the end of the day, you often get so many cars parked on the sidewalk that the kids are walking in the bike lane. So now the kids that are riding their bicycles to school are out into the roadway. And it's a mess on Ringwood. The concern would be that there was to be something similar on Selby. You know, the issue with Selby is that there is no sidewalk for people to walk their kids to and from school from El Camino to the school. And I understand that there is, you know, it's a large easement there. There's a lot of room and such. And we heard earlier that, you know, that it would be intrusive into people's front yards. That's not their front yard. That is public access. That is part of the public property, and is open for the town to create, I think, a safe way for people to travel to and from Selby Lane School, because these are young kids and they're not bicycling to school. They're being, and there isn't a lot of pedestrian activity from the school. However, there are a lot of residents that walk up and down Selby Lane. You cannot sit there. I work radar on that street 4 or 5 times a week. I can't recall ever sitting on Selby Lane and not seeing somebody walking their dog, walking their kids to school. You know, when it rains, you know, that easement, portions of it turn to puddles and mud. Now we're forcing people to walk on the street in the rain in limited sight conditions now with cars. And I think, I think, you know, the bicyclists and the cars can share the roadway. My personal opinion is that we need a sidewalk on Selby Lane. We need to be able to have parents walk their kids to school without having to walk in the roadway.
Well, the bike lane would be part of that.
You know, my experience has been that the bicyclists get very possessive of their bike lane, and to encounter somebody walking their dog in their bike lane, it's you can have an argument.
I agree with that.
You can have an argument.
Thank you,
as a
Jerry.
bicyclist. Well, thank you, Sergeant. Yeah, so are we solving the right problem is my question at this point. Is it that we should be looking at, because again, back to our mission statement, we're about promoting health through bicycling and walkways. So is a walkway not something that's more solution oriented?
But I mean, you can say that about the entire town of Atherton.
Oh, that's very true. This is
I
very
mean,
true.
there are roads that have more traffic and more pedestrians, like Oak Grove,
Right.
that have less room, and that's not a 60-foot easement there. It's probably closer to 50 feet. And we don't have anything for them.
but the agenda item is about Selby Lane. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm keeping my discussion.
so yeah, I just don't want to get into a philosophical
Right,
discussion
right.
about the town of Atherton. I want to stick to, are we going to
Right.
recommend approval of the bike lanes? So, all right, I'll make a motion then. If nobody else has discussion, I move that we approve the bike lanes, the plan as presented. Anybody want to second it? And we have to decide one way or another.
I'll second it.
So we have a second and a vote. Tom?
No.
David?
It feels like it's the wrong solution. No.
And I say yes.
And I have to go to yes.
Okay, didn't pass.
Hunted in a different kind of way.
2-2.
2-2, didn't pass. Where's Joe?
Then go amend it. Do you want to put it in something else?
We can put it in the next agenda item.
Well, it sounds like it's not going to pass the way that it is.
Correct.
So there are the options of recommending that the Bike and Ped Master Plan take another look at Selby and what that right solution might be.
Like
That sounds like a good idea.
I like that.
Which is that
I-
punting that you,
I say we adopt that as our motion, and I'll happily second it.
Okay.
Wait, who's motioning then?
What's the motion?
What Robert just said.
I
which was-
didn't motion. I'm just
I'll
saying that that's an option that you have.
I'll move for
That's
that.
good, you
and then
guys.
if you want to
Robert,
second
could
it.
you restate? I think a lot of people didn't hear. Could you
Okay,
restate?
so it goes back to that punting thing. And so we have, as indicated before, we have an update on the books for the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. As part of that, we're going to be evaluating the entire town, but in specific, you can recommend that plan take another look at Selby as to what that right solution might be.
Whether it be
Okay.
walkways or bicycle lanes or whatever.
Yeah.
So move.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that the bicycle pedestrian plan come up with a way to get between Alameda de las Pulgas and El Camino, between Valparaiso and Woodside Road, to include Selby and to include Selby Lane in that study, but find a way to get there from El Camino to,
For bicycles or pedestrian paths.
I'm not really up on pedestrian path because we could say that about the whole town.
Right.
And I've tried to push some other parts of Atherton. I've gotten nowhere. So
So what I'm thinking, so I'm hearing two different things from what
Yeah,
Robert's saying.
yeah.
Okay, so your motion is.
this is my motion
Okay, your motion is about, okay.
that we find that the pedestrian or the bicycle transportation plan find a way to get from those two spots.
Okay.
From El Camino to Alameda de las Pulgas, between Valparaiso and Woodside.
That plan or that motion sounds very separate from the current topic of the bike lane from El Camino to Adelante School.
To the school?
Yeah,
Mhm.
just, I want to be,
Well, we did
Clear
get,
that-
we got a little sidetracked there, didn't we? Talking about pedestrians. I mean, so that thing didn't pass. So we're on to
What's next?
starting at ground zero is my point. We're starting at ground zero again, and I'm saying we need to find a way to get from A to B. And
Okay.
that's my motion.
so if I made a motion that we propose to the town council that we do not pursue the bike plan, would that pass?
Wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, we're
Can-
saying.
can
we're
you
saying-
Well,
clarify?
we already, it didn't pass.
Okay.
The Selby Lane thing didn't pass. So that,
Is that how that ended up? Robert?
yeah, 2-2.
Well, so the motion to move forward with the project as it was ended at a 2-2. It did not pass.
Okay, thank you.
And so now you are looking at, is there an alternate recommendation
Got it.
regarding, I'm going to say regarding the project because that's what's on your agenda.
So based on the project,
I mean,
we could go with the finding a through street between El Camino and
Alameda.
Alameda. If I were to make a motion, I would be motioning that we look at the well, basically what Robert had said about looking at the existing plan, and if the current Selby solution, so I'm going to call it, is solving the right issues, the right problems.
Robert, I have a question for you. Would it be possible to suggest or recommend to the consultants who will be doing this that they look take an early look at Selby, specifically the question of bicycles versus pedestrians, because that's what we're kind of stuck on. And maybe we can move faster than a full revision of the master plan on Selby.
Well, the full master plan is going to be revised.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so as part of that, they're looking at the entire town, and we have some specifics that we need to dive deeper into. And one of those examples is Atherton Avenue. That is a route on the bicycle and pedestrian master plan that has certain recommendations on it. The council specifically, as part of the update, wants us to take a deeper dive into Atherton Avenue and some other streets. This can be one of those other streets.
Okay,
And so if that helps answer your question, I don't know if it's because it's developing an entire thing, there are going to be outreaches to different areas and different people. I don't think we're going to get the answer for Selby developed much faster than the rest of the plan.
I'd like to just say, we voted on the motion. Let's move on to the meeting, because we're not going to get, we could be here for hours discussing what the master plan should be and how we should approach it. And
That'll be another meeting.
we can
Yeah, we can put that.
discuss this at the next meeting.
Can I just I think that Raymond made a motion. I think we need to see if it.
Okay.
If Raymond's motion has a second before you.
Okay. And what is?
If it doesn't have.
So I'm going to summarize Raymond's motion.
Okay.
And then Raymond can confirm if I'm stating it correctly. So what I heard the motion is basically to defer a decision on the actual plan for Selby until after the development of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan is completed, which should take a dive at should evaluate what problem we are trying to solve on, or what issue we want to solve on Selby, be it bicycle or pedestrian.
More eloquent than I could have said it. So yes, but that is correct. So,
Okay.
So move.
So let's see if there's any sort of second
Okay.
vote.
In favor?
I don't get it. I mean,
I don't either.
It's
I
just-
vote.
if I may, the plan is already in place, right?
Yeah, well-
It's in progress,
We have an old plan
right?
that
But
had a recommendation. So what this is, what I heard Raymond say is, let's not move forward with this project until after that update is completed.
okay, I guess I wanted to separate those things because I thought what I heard you say, Robert, was that the master plan is under review. It may or may not get to Selby before anything else, per your question, but that's already in
Well,
process.
we have a capital project that has been approved to update the master plan. We are
Okay.
in active negotiations with a consultant to do that work.
Okay, so that's being done.
Yes.
Okay, so doesn't that sort of meet the motion's needs?
I think we're
Like I
already
say,
doing.
what I'm saying is that I need to know what we're doing with this project. I have a project on the books that I'm trying to deliver.
So Selby Lane is dead.
So right now,
Question. So we've allocated money. Sorry, I'm just going to interject. there's money on the budget. That's Robert's question, is we allocated money towards Selby Lane. And so the question is, do you guys need more information? Do you want to have this be tabled until the bike ped master plan? Should it go in front of the council with a hung committee?
I think the council ought to decide what they want to do. They've got the money, they should say, well, they voted, they didn't forward it, but we are or are not going to pass it.
I think we voted and or clinically it died. Right?
It
2-2
died, but that
dead.
doesn't stop the city council from doing what they want to do.
Is that
We're
how it
just
works, Robert?
advisory.
Yeah, so my question is, is there any sort of recommendation you want to make to council at this point with regards to this project?
Right, that they do not pursue this project as written would be my recommendation. In lieu
Okay.
of then, period. The master plan is under review and revision. Let that run its course, figure out what the master plan yields. I think in that process, you would take additional input from residents on Stockbridge or Selby and the other streets and give it its due, right? I think that the plan, as we've been discussing for however many of these meetings,
Okay.
doesn't go forward.
Okay, so can I request that you make a friendly amendment to Raymond's motion so that we can kind of document that what I'm hearing, recommendation is to stop the project as is.
Correct.
And let the master plan run its course with regards to any recommendation on Selby as it does with other streets.
Correct.
Okay.
Cool.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
There we go.
it passes. All right,
Thank goodness.
next item. Sergeant Metzger's been sitting here patiently.
No, I've been enjoying the banner.
Your nose is growing longer.
Both, we're here to discuss the traffic reports for October and November. They've been submitted to you all before now today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I will advise that mid-November, our e-sites, the machines that we use to issue citations and warnings, took a fatal crash. The company that provides that service to us was hacked. We're not under the impression that any information got out. However, we weren't unable to use those machines for a portion of the month, and we've just got that service back to 100% this last week. Fortunately enough, it coincided with a large storm that we had, so not having to be able to use the machines and in conjunction with it raining heavily wasn't a huge impact. But once the sun came out and cleared up, our traffic officers, myself included, were itching to get out and issue some more citations and warnings. So the numbers for November aren't attached in the staff report, in the traffic report. However, the numbers would be low for November. One, primarily because of the rain. Two, because of the e-sites machines being down. Three, the holiday, we're not Grinches, or well, at least your Thanksgiving Grinch, issuing citations in or about the time of Thanksgiving. But other than that, if there's any other questions, please feel free.
No question?
Yep.
That concludes the agenda.
Well, I do want to sorry, Chair, I do want to interject. There are a couple items that we will be bringing forward to you at a future meeting. So the first item is, we alluded to earlier, was a request by City Council for the Transportation, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Safety Committee to take a look at adjustments for speed limits related to two areas specifically. One, we talked about both at the last meeting, and that was related to the safety corridors that the council approved, as well as whether or not and where we should be looking at 15-mile-an-hour speed limits in school zones. So that's one item. The second also stems from the local roadway safety plan. Every meeting, you get your monthly report from PD with regards to accidents, and you have that listing. But as part of the local roadway safety plan, one thing that it's recommending that we do is an annual review of all the accidents that we have and see if there's anything that we can learn from that. And so that's something that we're going to ask PD to compile. So you have basically list, map, et cetera, of where and what transpired over the course of a year, so that you can look at things at a more holistic level than discrete. So those are two items that we'll be bringing forward in your coming meetings.
Okay, and the next, let me ask a question. Raymond, are you still going to be on?
I was looking for the committee comment section. I didn't find, but this is my final transportation committee meeting. I will be sending my resignation to Anthony. So been a pleasure serving with you guys. Thank you.
Where are you headed?
Moving off campus. Yeah, I finished my master's, so I will be no longer an Atherton resident, but I will still be visiting. So look forward to seeing.
Great.
Thank you.
So we need, well, thank you, a new member.
Will you still be a student?
No, I finished my program. I'll be walking the stage in May, but I won't be living on campus. I won't have a dorm in there. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
When is our next scheduled meeting?
I think your next regular meeting is the 4th Tuesday of January. I mean, keep in mind, this is a this is a reschedule special meeting from the November meeting. So it's your regular January meeting would be your next meeting.
Anybody?
That's if it's the fourth,
But can you take a look at the calendar?
Yeah, if it's the fourth Tuesday, it would be January 28th.
Is it the 4th or is it the 3rd? Can you take a look at the?
Listed on the 4th agenda is January 14th.
So I guess January 14th would be your regular
14th,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, so it's second Tuesday.
January 14th, yeah.
Yeah, let me log into the.
Future agenda item, there was something mentioned earlier. I wrote it down. The speed reduction. I think Robert mentioned it. There was a speed reduction conversation that would be tabled for the next meeting. The agenda.
Yeah.
I believe that was the speed reduction by the school. It's on
got it.
Selby
Okay.
Lane.
So I said it ties into the school zone conversation.
It looks like 3 of us can make it on the 14th, so that's all we need.
With one less member.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that the date on here is incorrect because it says the 4th Tuesday on the website and the 14th is not the 4th Tuesday. So I will have the chief make a correction and do an outreach to make sure that we will have a quorum, whatever the right date is.
Right. Yeah, the 4th Tuesday is the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think.
Okay, so if that doesn't meet quorum, then we'll have to schedule another special meeting or defer it to another date. So.
Okay, move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Thank you.